Hello, Australia.
Hello, Canada. How are you?
Folks, this is Stefan, and Stefan and I go way back to before electricity. I think back before the Second World War, and he and I worked together in Germany. Stefan was my art director, and then he went on to go follow. I kind of went from I went from Asia to Europe, and he went the opposite way. He went from Europe to Asia. And so he became a little bit famous in Asia, and then he went to Australia and became a little more famous and started his own company. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And created something that is truly special that I want to dial everybody in on. And that is Stefan and his company Mext have figured out a very cool way to leverage trust when it comes to building brands, and trust is everything. How was that introduction?
That was a very nice introduction, and I feel rather flattered. So I can't wait for the rest of the session if you continue like that.
It's only going to get worse. That's as good as it's going to get.
Okay,
Tell,
then
tell us about you. Tell us about yourself. You're obviously Australian. I can tell that from the German accent. So you were born in
that's right.
Germany, and then where did you go after we worked together at BBDO? You went to Vietnam, or did you go to Hong Kong?
Well, after we worked together in Germany, in Düsseldorf, to be precise, and where it was probably more partying together than working ultimately, very long nights. We were both in our early 20s that time. So, figure it out. We know each other for almost 30 years. Isn't
I
that
know.
scary? Um,
There are
and we had
countries that don't last as long as I've known you.
quite a few, that's correct. And so then when you look at the different paths, yes, I went afterwards to Hong Kong, and I was bloody lucky to score a gig with Bates Advertising as an art director. And Bates at that stage was the sixth most award-winning agency at the Cannes Festival, so quite literally
Mm-hmm.
one of the top agencies in the world. And did that for almost 3 years in Hong Kong, but worked mostly on regional and global projects. And then you're absolutely right. Then I went to take over the Indochina region as group head of creative and strategy, and based myself in Ho Chi Minh City and looked after Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Burma, which was, that was kind of the open East. Everything was just starting. And here, lo and behold, then I buggered off to Australia after that, and then had another interlude back in Europe as head of strategy for BBDO, and then came back to Australia and have been back here for a long time, but travel a lot and still work a lot globally.
Now you have, with your company Mex, you came onto something that I don't expect every art director to follow in your footsteps, because you went to research. And I remember when I first went to visit you, and you had just published a book on research, and you partnered with a German academic who actually pioneered a field of psychology based on trust. And I thought, how the hell does an art director get into this? Usually they get into, like, circus tricks and stuff like that. But you went the other way. What happened?
The other way is, as an art director and then as a creative director, you have a direct impact on how people tick, and you influence their behaviors, but you often do it just very strongly out of intuition. And I was so much more interested in as well, what is actually the psychologic behind it? Why is this happening? Why can I influence it? And how can I actually empower creatives and other people who can execute far stronger from a strategic level to do that? And so I looked far more into, how do people behave? Why do they do what they do? And the big break came when I went back to Germany as head of strategy for BBDO, where both of us basically
Mm-hmm.
started.
Were you at
Um,
BBDO Düsseldorf doing strategy?
that's correct.
Oh
So
my God. So
in
you got to
our
sit up on the fifth, you got to sit up on the top floor.
uh, now the top floor was now TV production. So I
Oh,
think I was I think on the third floor suddenly, but not far from our old office. And I came in contact with a psychologist called Barbara Grossgard, and she was from the field of so-called morphological psychology, and she had studied under Professor Wilhelm Salber, who is the father of this methodology. He is pretty much regarded as in the vein of Freud, Jung, and this is the most modern full psychology theory. And the cool thing about Salber was he studied psychology, then he worked as a market researcher. And he went and he said, it's like, I studied all the psychologies. I still don't understand why people do what they do. So he went back to the University of Cologne and he became the head of the psychology department, and he developed this morphological psychology that really aims to understand the decision-making processes. Why do people come to the decisions they make? And he built this really quite amazing framework. And for the first time as a strategist and a creative, it gave me an understanding of the context in which consumers or people make decisions. And that was incredibly powerful. And so as you wanted to have cool anecdotes, so I was the head of strategy there, looking quite literally after over $1 billion in advertising investment and responsible for it. And we had this big conference with all the kind of heads of strategy from the BBDO world who looked after telcos in London. And our then chairman held this amazing presentation about the importance of trust. And it showed it's the key to our success. All the metrics go up. It is absolutely critical. And he finished with that. Mm-hmm. And the entire room of senior executives of telcos globally and us genius BBDO heads of strategy were sitting there in total agreement with him. And then one American client just beautifully raised his arm and he said, all right, if trust is that important, which I believe, then how do I build it? How do I manage it? And how do I ask my CFO for money for it? And there was dead silence in the room.
Nobody knew.
No one knew. So, our highly paid clients asked genius strategy directors in advising those people in the room on literally 4, 5, 6 billion US dollars market investment per year. We all didn't have a bloody clue how this thing is actually built, apart from the generics: be consistent, communicate, be transparent, be honest, and all that other bullshit. And so I found that incredibly embarrassing. So we went back to the office and I made 3 poor interns troll anything they could find about trust. So we looked at marketing, we looked at interpersonal relationships, we looked at psychology, anthropology, sociology, anything you can think of. And everything kind of talked about the effect of trust, but nothing actually explained how trust forms. And when you think even about a simple example like communicate, well, that doesn't tell me what to communicate. If I communicate the one thing, I build trust. If I communicate the other thing, I actually could create distrust. So just the advice of communicate to build trust is utter nonsense. And that was a pervasive thing. And so in the end, I went back to Barbara and I said, Barbara, it's like, there is nothing around. Why don't we just have a look into it? And at first, Barbara says, just too bloody difficult. And so I just went, it's like, if we don't try, we don't get. Mm-hmm. And then she said, let's bring in Professor Salber. And so we just simply started looking into how is trust actually experienced? What do people say about it? And we did then afterwards a whole raft of literally 90-minute in-depth psychological interviews and analyzed how does this came to pass. And Barbara in the driver's seat with supervision from Salber just looked at all the different insights and she created this wonderfully simple model of how trust is experienced and forms in our mind. And the simple trick to it is just simply trust can only ever be what you trust for. It has to manifest itself. That's the very first point. Trust is not fluffy. It is pegged to something very specific, and subconsciously or unconsciously, these things add up in our mind as the overall trust. And So we just looked at this model and started working with it. And that's pretty much what we've been focusing on for the last 17 years.
Now, your book, I remember when I first got it, it was a hard book to read. I thought it was a hard book to read, but you and I just today, that's what sparked me to get you on the blower, because you and I are working on a pitch document for you, sort of proposals for professionals, people in professional space, but this works for everything. And I remember I told you, I said, you know, it's funny, I never thought I would be coming back here, but everything that I talk about now is about leveraging trust, because I work with startups. They don't have any trust of their own because nobody knows about them. So they have to leverage the trust of people in their tribe. But that's as specific as it gets for me. And so I looked at your proposal and you had a wheel and there were 6 different areas of trust. And I thought, damn, if you could isolate trust like that and go, you know, trust for this specific thing, trust for that specific thing, trust for relationships, trust for product, trust for, it would help people so much. And that's why I wanted to bring you in here, because everybody who's watching this is either a marketing professional or a founder or entrepreneur of a startup. So I want you to lay out for them, you know, that trust isn't just, oh, they trust me. It goes far deeper than that. What could they actually use from your model that would help them get a leg up and become the preferred supplier of, or the first person on the phone, or, you know, the person recommended by 4 out of 5? You know, what could they do?
I'll get into the model in a second. There are probably a few things that are really important to already understand. Is that a lot of the stuff that is said and written about trust, even by the big authors and people talking about it in marketing and business people, is just utter bullshit. That is really important to first of all remember. So, you know, all those generics we talked about before, they're bandied around by literally everyone. Uh-huh. Then another thing is that always comes up is that people say trust takes long to build and you can destroy it in a blink.
That's the first thing you learn in advertising, the brand trust.
But it's utter nonsense, because when you think about it, it's like every millisecond that you think about a brand, a person, or interact with it, and see advertising of it or whatever it is, every time that happens, your mind in milliseconds assesses the trust in that person or brand. That means also, depending on the messages that are being conveyed to you or the messages you think of, your trust changes in milliseconds. So literally, trust is built and destroyed every millisecond. It's a constant process. Therefore, if you bear that in mind, you can influence it also every millisecond. And that influence has a huge impact. We measure trust on a scale from 0 to 10. If you get just 1 point higher in trust with your customer, it doubles their likelihood to buy from you. It doubles their likelihood to recommend you. And if it's a client, it doubles their loyalty. Shift it up another little point, another 1 out of 10 point, and it doubles it again. So you're talking already about quadrupling. So you can't look at trust as binary. You need to look at it as a gradient. And evolutionary, that makes sense. Our sense of trust has evolved over tens of thousands of years, and not just to survive, but to literally thrive. And once you have that in mind, it's actually about a constant trust lens. How much is what I do shifting the trust up or down? Mm-hmm. Even I'm not perfect. So I constantly do stupid stuff in workshops and presentations that diminishes trust. But my trick is I need to do more of the good stuff to make up for the shitty stuff that I do. And that's perfectly all right. But if you don't try, you don't get. So that's I think, a really important point. Then when you come back to our model, it's the understanding that trust is not one amorphous thing, but trust consists in our mind of 6 very specific kinds of trust, makes it very easy to work with. And we talked about the concept of just look at it not as psychology, it's just simply 6 buckets of trust that you have to fill. Mm-hmm. In each of those buckets, I've got some buckets here. In fact, we always use them, right? So one of those buckets is development trust. So that's our yellow color.
Mm-hmm.
When you start up or a fairly unknown brand or company, the development trust bucket is actually quite important one, because if you can't trust this company to develop well into the future, to be relevant to me, to become a leader and to kick ass, you're not going to even go with them.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make me trust that you will develop well in the future? And then you need to explore simply cool little things about you. It could be, for example, that your idea has been groundbreaking, or someone who is bigger or better had a look at it. It can be that you just simply go into a new course and you're
Mm-hmm.
exploring something new, or you're investing into a new online system. You need to explore what are the things that would fill it. And you will suddenly find that in each of those buckets, you will find actually a lot of things. And then when you think about those things, suddenly every one of those things, you need to think about it as money. The message that you're investing $5,000 into online systems is worth trust. It can shift trust up by 0.5 or maybe 0.7. It doubles the buying propensity and buying propensity to recommend you. That's worth money.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that you might have just gotten a new distribution point is again worth money. So when you think about the 6 buckets and the messages to fill it with, think about every message as being worth money. Some might be worth $10, another one might be worth $1. But that's basically how it is. And if you then take the 6 buckets, you have development trust. That is about, why can I trust you to develop well into the future?
Mm-hmm.
The opposite side to that is stability trust, the blue color, which is about, why can I trust you to have built a strong and stable foundation?
So you're
And
not going to suddenly change character on me. So you're not going to get all weird on me.
That's correct, but they belong together, correct? Because if you have development trust and stability trust, it's like, where do you come from? How do you go forward into the future? Right? So
that totally makes sense. That's super easy.
Exactly. And so even for a startup, a lot of people who do a startup have already a long professional history with great achievements. So you use your personal ones in the stability trust bucket, but the company ones you use in the development trust bucket. They both belong together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then you've got the next pair, because we're talking 6 buckets. And the next one is simply relationship trust, pink,
Mm-hmm.
and benefit trust. So relationship trust is about, what kind of relationship can you offer me and can I trust you for? And can I trust you to relate well to people like me? So that can manifest itself in how you interact with your customers. How proactive are you? Are you also caring about them personally? How long have you had relationships already? What's your customer service and your follow-up like? So these are things that go into the relationship trust bucket. People often talk about, you just have to build a good relationship. That's not enough. You need to define it. Is it inspiring? Is it eye-opening, motivating? Is it supportive? Is it comforting? And on the opposite side, you also then have benefit trust, because if I have a relationship, I want to get a benefit out of it. So what is actually the benefit that I get out of this relationship? Is it fun? Is it that it brings me further much faster? Is it that I'm more critical and I focus on things? So let's take the example of mentor. Most people have a mentor. My mentor was an ex-GE CEO. So when I had to rock up for my monthly meeting, I usually bounced in and I thought, I've done great stuff this month, really, look how I've progressed. And I proudly tell Jeff about it. And Jeff just asked those really cutting and incisive questions. And I go, holy shit, I haven't really done that well. I could have done much better. So as a relationship trust, actually, it is highly uncomfortable. But the benefit out of it is that I know exactly what to focus on and I progress much faster. So trust doesn't always have to be nice and comfortable. Trust can also be quite cutting and brutal. as long as one of the buckets is filled properly. And this is the benefit trust, right? So whereas other people, they've got a mentor who is really comforting and they can, you know, put their head almost on their shoulders and cry. That's the relationship of being comforting and supportive. And the benefit trust is then they get more confidence out of it again. But it's a totally different thing. So which of those do you want to be? So you need to start to define it, and then you find all these cool things that you can fill it with. So that's relationship and benefit trust. And then the last one is vision trust and competence trust. So if you have vision trust, that is about what are your values, your mission, your vision for the future. It's about a bigger sense in the community. So if you have, for example, look at an example, let's say my vision is to eradicate malaria globally so that no one dies or suffers from it anymore. You probably think that's a fantastic vision and you would be supportive of it. But then you instantly, and we do it in workshops all the time, I say this and then I just wait a few seconds and you can see people go, yeah, that's a good vision. I like this one. And then suddenly they start shaking their heads. And I go, why? And then instantly they say, it's like, well, you can't achieve that. Right? And so I say, yes, that is exactly how trust works, right? So they love my vision, but in our minds, exactly in milliseconds, they also assess whether I've got the competence trust. And
I love it.
Poor old Stefan, I have no competencies to achieve this, right?
Yeah. I think we both thrive at incompetence, which is I think it's something that I trust myself with my incompetence. I'm quite happy about it.
But if it was Bill Gates standing in front of them and he says, my vision is to eradicate malaria globally, are you with me? Then suddenly people are missing, whoa, it's not that he's got billions, but actually he's got the networking skills, he's got the intelligence, he has access to all these people. You know, if he calls the UN General Secretary at 10 p.m., the UN General Secretary is not going to answer my call, but he's going to answer Bill's call. And of course, Bill has shown with Microsoft he can change the world. So that's stability trust, right? Mm-hmm. So suddenly it all falls into place. And that is actually how trust works. It's these 6 simple buckets of trust, and think about what you want to and can be trusted for in those 6 buckets, and start to write down all the small and little things that you will start to filter into your communications, into your Facebook posts, into your website, into your conversations, into your calls.
I think it's brilliant.
Think about what is customer that they would love to trust you for, and that's usually the cool stuff.
I love it. I love it.
Small business. We worked with a media company, right? So, and they do small advertisers, and there was this bathroom renovation company. So something really simple, right? And they said, you know, the typical thing, logo, over 60 years of experience. So that is stability trust, right? So if you change that copy line ever so slightly, and you simply say, on the forefront of bathroom fashion or trends for over 60 years, then you suddenly have actually development trust first, right? So at the vision. Bathroom trends for over 60 years, yeah, and the 60 years is stability. So suddenly, instead of just building 1 bucket, you're already actually building 2 buckets. So now think about it. If you want to have your bathroom renovated, you don't want to have the fashion or the trends from 60 years ago. You want to have the stuff that is going to be valid for the next 20 years too. So just by changing the words ever so slightly, you totally change what people can trust you for, will trust you for, and you have a totally different conversation with them.
I love it.
That's how
I'm gonna link people to you because people can see all these weird shadows hitting me in the face. It's actually 9:15 at night here. We're talking the night before this is actually going on the air. But I'm going to link people to you. And what should they be looking at on your website to get them launched?
I think actually the trust model, we call it the U trust model for human trust, is up there. They are also under the events and learning center, quite a few things. And if you listen to what we've talked about today and you just literally look at the model, then get in there and start collecting all the great things you can already be trusted for, and talk to other people what they say about you can be trusted for in each of those buckets, and just pick out a few that instantly resonate with you and chuck them into conversations and just see how people react. I guarantee you will feel the difference instantly.
One last story. You talked about the telephone sales department. I mean, the most basic level of sales, and you talked about the difference that they saw.
Yeah, so as a little bit of context, when we train this stuff, we train literally CEOs of investment funds pitching for $1 billion right through to face-to-face, and telemarketers selling $50 electricity contracts one-off on the phone. And when we train them, we look at the trust flow in the conversation and when they should be inserting what kind of things. And just by using some of those things, they say, I can hear how the conversation changes, how the trust goes up by 1 or 2 points. And the experience for them is totally different, because if you shift their trust up by 1 point or 2, suddenly customers start to ask you questions, and they do it in a positive manner. They want to know more. And then you sell faster. So the effect is you need less selling time. It becomes a better experience for yourself, and you get a higher conversion and a higher value. So with that, we often get sales improvements of somewhere around 30% within 4 weeks by training this stuff and trying different things out. That is the instant effect that you can get out of it.
Well, I'm stoked because I'm bringing you in on a new project that I'm working on. I already talked to you about that. And folks in the Brand DIY group also have to know that you're one of the members. And so I'm going to link you. I'm going to put your name up so that they can all reach out to you and have you check into their stuff. You're an incredible resource. And I am super stoked to have so many people who are so much smarter than me as my friends. So, you're
humble as always, and probably not quite justified.
All right, I'm going to bed. I'm quite old now, and you're just waking up. It's lunchtime where you are.
That's correct. And
now you've got a funky sort of thing going on around your head because you're using the virtual background, but people have to know that this is how cool you are. That is actually your office right there. So
that's correct.
Cool.
Remember, we're still in lockdown, so we are not allowed to leave the house without essential reason, and we're certainly not allowed to go to the office. So I'm using the background from home while sitting in the garden, quite literally.
Yeah, well, that's one hell of an office. All right, Stefan, I'm off.
Yeah.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.